Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good, good. We're excited to have you here today and get all the questions. We've had loads that have already been submitted today, so hopefully we'll get even more through our Q&A. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, like I say, thank you for having me, and really looking forward to these questions.
Well, we'll dive straight into the formal interview side of things.
Yeah.
And to start off, just so that the young people can get to know you a little bit better, could you tell us about your career journey and your current role?
Yeah, like I say, we got a lot to pack in 45 minutes. So I'll give you just a brief sort of overview. I was born in Southampton. I was born into hospitality. My mum and dad had a bed and breakfast. So sort of unknowingly, but actually gave me a great head start. I was sort of doing kind of hospitality work and welcoming guests because our family home was also the business. And it was amazing. So from there, that kind of gave me a real early insight to hospitality. I had a mum and dad that were, you know, kind of instilled and sort of drilled like quite a sort of strong work ethic into me from a young age. And then from there, I went to school, as everyone does, and then college. And then when I started college, I had an amazing college lecturer called Martin Nash, and he was best friends with the late, great Gary Rhodes. And that was sort of my first kind of like real sort of step into a proper working professional kitchen. So Gary helped me out. I moved to London. I worked for Gary Rhodes for 3 years. In that time, the restaurant won a Michelin Star, which was an amazing, just an amazing thing to be a part of. And then from there, I sort of went and worked for a chef that at the time in the industry was so well known and revered, and almost you're like, oh, shall I go work for this guy? He's a real, he's really, really strict and a real sort of tyrant. But I was just absolutely drawn to go in and working for Gordon Ramsay. So at the time, restaurant Gordon Ramsay, it just literally finished Aubergine, and Gordon opened his own restaurant, and it had 2 Michelin stars. And I was there for over a year, and then it won the 3rd. And that was an amazing thing still now to be a part of. When you see sort of a 3 Michelin star restaurant is such a rare thing in the United Kingdom, and to be a part of a team and a brigade to sort of see that happen was just something I'll never forget, and a very proud moment of my career. And then from there, I went to work for Marcus Waring. And then in 2005, I met a group of people, and a person in particular who's still now my mentor and is now the chairman of the Ainsworth collection, but introduced me to Padstow, Cornwall. And I never had any sort of like reason to move to Cornwall. I was like a lot of people. I'd come here with my mates, like when I was a kid, come here on family holidays. And here we are now. I live here with my own family. It'll be 18 years in November. And that was how it all started. The restaurant I'm sat in right now, number 6, was a bed and breakfast. I started here as a head chef. 3 years later, me and my wife, Emma, we took over the lease. We bought the business, called it Paul-Ainsworth at number 6. And here we are 18 years later. We have Cafe Reggiano, which is our Mediterranean. We make all our own pasta, our sourdough pizzas, lots of lovely sort of Mediterranean influenced dishes. Then we have Padstow Townhouse, which is sort of styled and done by my wife Emma, which is our 6 boutique rooms. The Mariners, which is our pub, and Cece's Bar, which is my daughter's called Cece, and it's kind of like an 18-seater intimate kind of cocktail bar that she will not be thinking that she's just got rite of passage when she's 18 years old. And that's kind of like it summed up really, really quickly, and the entire collection.
Nice. Thank you for the overview. It's really good at just picturing who you are and what you're a part of. So now that we kind of have this, we're going to go for our second question, which is a really interesting one. And it might be a little bit difficult to answer, might be easy. We've got, what makes you passionate about food?
It's a great question, and I'll sort of give you a sort of real life experience. So most of my career working for other chefs was based around fine dining, like sort of what you would call like really kind of high end like cuisine. And back in like when I was starting out as a chef, really like in the world of food, fine dining was kind of like the only type of food that was like worth kind of considering. And what's been incredible about like if we just focus on the United Kingdom, where the United Kingdom now is as a world stage for food, but also the way that we celebrate everything. And it's because we've got incredible farmers and fishermen and growers and artisan producers producing the amazing raw products for us as chefs to then produce amazing things. So the passion's always been there for food, but to sort of, I think, to answer that question best, when I did Cafe Reggiana, and I won't name the quite famous chef, right, but sort of 12 years ago, I went into Cafe Reggiana and I was buzzing. I loved getting into kind of like making our own pasta and doing, you know, from an ossobuco ragu to a crab linguine to like the headache that is dough and the sort of the temperature and if the kitchen's cold and if the kitchen's warm and, you know, just beautiful, simple grilled dishes and all of that I loved. And this chef asked me, he was like, how do you do what you do at number 6? But then go into like something like food like that, almost as if that food was a bit beneath kind of like what we perceived then as like the only type of cooking there is proper cooking is high end. And at the time I couldn't answer the question, and now I clearly can answer the question, and it goes back to the person that's asked that question. Passion for food. I love food. I buzz off of when we're like coming up with a new burger for the pub or Cafe Reggiano, when we're sort of like, right, what's the next pizza topping? What's the new grilled simple fish dish? So for me, it's a passion for all food, as long as you've got amazing ingredients and, you know, and it's what you love. I'll never cook anything that I don't personally like, and that's not much, but I like all foods. But, you know, that's where the passion, that's where the drive comes from.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer because we might, you know, I guess not everybody will want to go into fine dining if they want to have a
No.
career in hospitality. So, yeah, great to hear that. Thinking about your kind of career and going into all these kitchens, and you know, you mentioned, you know, getting that 3-star Michelin chef in Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. It must be very stressful and very high pressure. So how do you cope with like dealing with stress and high pressure situations? What are your kind of coping mechanisms to make sure that you're okay outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, back then when I started working for Gordon when I was 21. So back then, it was just very much like, I suppose, you know, I had amazing parents. You know, my mum and dad were always an amazing support. And I don't know, and this is probably going to come up later on in this conversation, but, you know, I'll start with it now and you'll probably see it as a common theme through some of the questions I'm going to get asked. But I've just always had a bit of a thing of, you know, there's lots of kind of analogies, there's lots of sort of quotes and things you can look at, but the one for me that's always just done me well is that kind of that resilience, that never giving in. And I know that I'm going to get it wrong and I know I'm going to make mistakes, and as long as I just never give up, never give in, and turn up the next day and try again. Because I think in anything, I think if you look at like athletes, if you look at like sports as a really good kind of sort of barometer for like mindset and mentality, that for me is what's always sort of kind of just always been there for me. That like, yeah, you know what, I have got it wrong, I've made a mistake, I've mucked up, I have gone into a dark space about it, it has got to me. You know, sometimes you can get over that in a day, sometimes it takes a lot longer, but I've just always been As long as I feel where I am and the situation I'm in and the environment I'm in is the right one, and the people around me are good people, and those people are great mentors, and those are people that I can continually learn from. And that's even present right now. I'm always learning. I'm a big believer in, no such thing as sky's the limit and a ceiling. It's you you never ever stop learning, and as long as you can stay teachable, and that's a big thing in what we do in the Ainsworth collection as our kind of our sort of set of principles. One of them is stay teachable, listen to learn, don't always just listen to reply. And that for me is that's how I cope, that's how I deal with stress.
Yeah, I love that. I love those different answers. And I like where you said that sometimes it can take a day and sometimes it can like take a week for you to get over something, and don't like judge yourself for that, I guess. Just like accept that you need the time. Love that. Really great to hear that, you can keep going and rely on those around you to kind of and your passion, of course, to keep going and be like, this is what I want. Nice. So our next question is, we might have lots of young people on the call watching that are thinking about going into a career in hospitality. What should young people be aware of, whether that's a skill or a piece of information that they might not know beforehand, before they enter the industry? What's something they should think of or develop before they go, I'm going to try?
I got asked this by a 14-year-old lad on Tuesday. We've got the Paul-Ainsworth Academy at Truro and Penwith College. He's currently at school. He's thinking of joining the academy when he leaves, and he just said to me, "What does he need? What does he?" And I think his question was like, "Does he have to have amazing knife skills from the offset? Does he have to know a bit about this, a bit about that?" Absolutely not. Anyone that's watching this right now that's like thinking of taking a career in hospitality, I can promise you that like my whole life has been dedicated to hospitality, and there's been some really tough times and hard times, but do you know what? They don't even come close to how many good times and how many amazing memories and the amazing people I've met, but also just how good hospitality's been for me. Going back to what we said previously, like I remember I had a group of mates, and sometimes if they were going through a bit of a rough patch, they would sort of obviously finish work around 5-6 o'clock, and I didn't. I'd be finishing a lot later. And sometimes when I was going through something, I realized that like actually sort of like work set me free. It kind of, I had a focus. I didn't sort of then go home and have a lot of time to like overthink and like just sort of like dwell on my thoughts. And that's been a real benefit for me, certainly in really hard times when, like losing my dad in 2015, like this industry was incredible for me in learning and helping me cope with that, because it gave me a real outlet, a real focus. And anyone that's coming into this, all you need is just a great attitude and a willing to just want to learn, and like just be hungry, be ambitious. And like you said at the beginning, Charlie, it's not just all about this label like fine dining. It's not at all. There has never been, and I joined, I'm 43 now. I started as a chef when I was 16, and right now in the United Kingdom, across the whole board, from hotels to restaurants to cafes to bars to everything hospitality focused, you spoil for choice, because there are so many operators that have absolutely changed the game in making sure that people are paid their worth, that people are valued, that the quality of life and working hours is a lot better. But also then you've got the people that, like we said at the beginning, the farmers, the fishermen, the growers, the artisan producers that are just doing really exciting things. So if you're kind of, taking a job and working at a really good shack on a beach, it's doing amazing like lobster rolls and serving absolutely stunning artisan coffee, that's cool. That's really, really, really cool. And that's what makes the industry so exciting.
Yeah, nice. You're getting me excited about it, and I'm not even in hospitality. So thinking about the industry and what it currently is and where it's going, our next question is thinking about like creating a dish. And I'm sure you've probably been asked this before, but you know, what inspires you when you're making a new dish, and how do you stay creative after so many years in the industry?
So at school, I was really, really not good at school. It just wasn't, when I was at school, it was like the GCSEs were related to coursework, and I kind of left school with literally like nothing. But what I had outside of school was I was always working and always kept myself working, and I've got my parents to absolutely thank for that. And I can just remember sort of like, that day when you go and collect your results and everyone's signing each other's school shirts and writing their names on it. And when all of that was over, I just remember walking home on my own and having this real sense of like, okay, that's gone now. And right, I'm in literally like the big wide world, and I had no plan other than just, okay, well, whatever I'm going to do, I'm just going to work really, really hard at it. But the only thing that I was like all right at school was kind of like storytelling, story writing, and like that creative process, which was then, I don't know if it still is now, it was called English. And I think I've always been quite creative. I've always had quite a passion for just always being able to kind of like find ideas, and also that creativity then spills into like problem solving, firefighting, finding solutions constantly for problems, always looking at everything with a glass half full approach and a positive approach, and always kind of like, well, what's the solution? Let's not dwell on the problem too much. What's the solution? And then that comes in the process of like the creativity of dishes. When I'm sort of coming up with a dish, I bounce off everything. I bounce off looking back in my own repertoire and chefs I've worked with. I'm just totally inspired by all of the producers and all of the people that are in my life that have become amazing friends that supply us at the restaurants, to all of our head chefs, our sous chefs. But what we do in the Ainsworth collection is the next best idea comes from anyone, and we open that out to everyone. Everyone's empowered. So it's not just a conversation between myself, the head chef, and the sous chef. It's a conversation between all of us. We're all empowered to kind of sort of say, right, well, there's probably one voice in this conversation that's going to just say something that then makes that either the finishing touch, sparks the idea to then snowball. And yeah, it's the whole process of the, creativity comes from literally everywhere, not just, I think some people might think it's like picking up a cookbook, looking through it, sketching a dish. It doesn't. It comes from any sort of form of, I suppose any kind of form of whatever you see in life. I can be driving along and just sort of like looking out the window or looking ahead, and then all of a sudden pop, something happens, and a lot of the time I'll pull over and then type it in the notes. Then when I get into the restaurant or wherever I think that idea is, or I'll ring John, our group culinary director, and I'll be like, John, like get this in, and like let's kind of play around with this. And 2 days ago, I rang John up and I was like, John, I really want to like bring madeleines on the menu at Cafe Reggiano, and like I think like what about if we did like 6 or 12, and the customer could order 6 or 12, but we literally take them out on the tray, bake them to order, serve them with we do an amazing like brown butter and vanilla ice cream at Cafe Reggiano, and serve it with that, drizzle it with a bit of chestnut honey, because madeleines, they go really well with that. And then he's like, yeah, brilliant, we'll get it in. And then we did first test run yesterday. So it's absolutely non-stop, and it always is. Where I love to always keep things moving, keep things fresh.
Yeah, I imagine that's a very like fun part of the job, is to be like, oh yeah, let's just try this, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
And I love that little bit of idea of like just noting those ideas down, like when they come to you. It's like that thing where you have a dream, you wake up and you forget it. Like you don't want to have an idea, carry on doing something, and then it's gone. So I
Yeah.
like the idea of just getting it down in your phone, or we're texting it to someone or whatever, to keep that thing in place. Good little bit of tip there.
Yeah, I've always pretty close by. There's a notebook. My preferred way, like of jotting notes, is the old-fashioned way, because I just think also as well, there's something, I really do believe in that kind of manifestation process, and I feel that when you kind of, even when it comes to your dreams, your aspirations, your goals, even when you're saying them out loud, to yourself, don't think that you're bonkers. That's perfectly normal. But there's also, I feel, when you write them down, when you sort of put pen to paper, there's something special about that.
Yeah,
and it
definitely.
gets you away from your phone, because we all spend way too much time on the phone.
Oh, way too true. I feel like everyone is stuck to it at this point for at least 4 hours a day. So our final question for this half, before we move on to all our student questions, is if you could have been given one piece of advice when you were 16, what would that piece of advice would have been? If you could kind of go back and give your 16-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
To not worry as much about all the things that you think are really important, and kind of know that sometimes just that you're doing okay, and it's good to it's kind of good to constantly look forward, constantly keep pushing, keep driving, but sometimes just really live in the moment a bit more. That's something that I have no regrets, in my life, but if I could look back and say to myself now, just live in that moment a little bit more, yeah, have goals, but also sort of sometimes just pat your own self on the back and say, you know what, you're doing it, and it is life. Certainly the world that we've kind of created now, in the world that we live in now, it can be extremely overwhelming. It can be very demanding. I think if you think life before email, and even life before a mobile phone, it was the reason people look back on that time and think that it was a bit easier, a bit more simple, is because you just weren't as easily contactable. Whereas now it's so instant, and it can be overwhelming, and just sort of know that do you know what, you're doing all right, you're doing okay, and yeah, just live in the moment a little bit more, Paul, as opposed to just sort of constantly looking what's going to happen tomorrow, and just sort of live in that present day. And on the same token, don't it's good to be reflective, but don't punish yourself for things you feel you've done wrong, or the mistakes you may have made, or it's happened for a reason, and take any good you can from it. And all of those things have shaped me. They kind of put me in a position that when a young person comes to me and says, I'm really struggling, those mistakes have now, they're actually a real benefit in my life, because they allow me to help other people, and they've given me life experiences.
Yeah, love that, definitely. Some great advice there. So that brings the end of our formal interview set of questions, and we're now moving on to our student questions that have come in. We're getting loads already, so everyone watching, keep bringing those in. We're getting around to them now, and we'll kick off straight away with one that's come in today anonymously. So this is coming from an anonymous young person, and they have asked, fave dish to cook your friends and family.
Oh, that's a good one. It's definitely a roast, and the reason for that is the only way we when I'm at home with friends and family, it's never a plated like dish of food. It is, everything is on bowls, platters. It goes in the middle of the table, and it is my absolute favorite way of eating. And if you think about it, a roast dinner, like sort of at home, my mum would plate it all, like when we was kids. But like we don't. I put a bowl of roast potatoes on the table, slice up all the meat, all the vegetables, the gravy, a big kind of tray of bubbling cauliflower cheese, and it's just, a roast dinner is such a special meal. And I think that's my absolute favourite to cook at home, especially now when, you've got such amazing farm shops where you can go get the most amazing, beautiful, freshest farm vegetables, again, supporting your local butcher. And then, gravy. I mean, it is all about the gravy. So yeah, that's my favourite dish at home to cook for my friends and family.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. I'm a gravy fiend in my house. I just like, it's not a roast dinner if it's not swimming in it. That's no. How I eat my roasts. So our next question comes from Lincoln College, and they have asked, how has having a Michelin star impacted your career?
It's huge. There's no other way to describe it than, I suppose the best way to sort of tell you is give you a quick of how it happened. The year we won our Michelin star was the year that the guide was due to be released around the beginning of October, and it was leaked online on September the 27th. I got a phone call in the morning from a chef friend called Simon Holston, who rang me up saying, and also like, it was a call that like, I know Simon, but we don't know each other to the point that he'd be ringing me at 7 o'clock in the morning. So he rang me up at 7 o'clock, and I sort of answered it because it was just so random to be getting a phone call from him. And he was like, have you seen Twitter? And I said, no. And he was like, it looks like the guide's been leaked and it's saying that number 6 has a Michelin star. And like I just remember we didn't have Cece then, our little girl. It was just me and Emma, and we were like, what? Like, it just like, oh my goodness. So I rang Tom Kerridge, who's a really, really close friend of mine, and I said, like, what do you think? What should I do? He texted me the number for Michelin HQ, and he said, give him a ring at 9 o'clock. So I rang them at 9 o'clock, and it was almost like this chap I spoke to was like, just, I don't know, part of the magic, part of the story. And I was like, hello, Michelin HQ. And I was like, oh, hello. I couldn't get my words out, Charlie. I was like stuttering. I was like, oh, my name's Paul-Ainsworth. I've got a restaurant in Padstow called Number 6. And I just wanted to ask, like, it says all over Twitter that like Number 6 has a Michelin star. And he was like, does it, young man? And I was like, yeah, it does. And he was like, okay, well, he said, well, Paul, if it's in black and white and you've seen it online, he said, I'd take that as good as true. And honestly, like, Emma just broke down in tears. We were in our lounge, and like, I literally was like, I was just absolutely dumbstruck. And I remember kind of once I'd sort of got over the initial shock, like walking, we used to like live really close to the restaurant back then, and I was walking down the hill that day, and just walking to Number 6, it just felt different. I was like, I'm walking to Number 6, the Michelin starred restaurant. And it, like, the whole morning was bonkers. Telephone call after telephone call, text messages from people I didn't even know who had got my number from someone. One being like Rene Rezepe from Noma. I don't know Rene, but he sent me a text message wishing me congratulations. And I just remember, Charlie, like, once all the commotion and we got set for lunch and we had a busy lunch, and I just was on the path, and I sort of, like, as we always do every day, dressed the dish, team ready there to take it, and I pushed the dish forward, and it was just like, that's now like, that's a Michelin star dish. We're now one of, I think at the time we were about like, there was about 120 odd one Michelin star restaurants in the United Kingdom, and we were one of those. And still to this day, it's the biggest and most, that, and when I opened, we were dead every night. We had no customers. no one knew who we were. And we've now got to a situation where, you know, people know where we are, know who we are. And that's also like an absolute like accolade that we never ever take for granted. But yeah, a Michelin star is a very, very special thing. And I think sometimes what a lot of people don't know is that once you've won it, that's one thing, but you've effectively got it on a year-to-year basis. So every year you are maintaining, you are striving, you are like trying to be better, you know, like, you know, certainly we look at the Michelin Guide as something, you know, can we go further? Can we, you know, excel and go further in the Michelin Guide? But also being very aware and thankful and grateful that like we've got one Michelin star, which is amazing, but, you know, effectively we've got it for a year. And next year there'll be the revelations, and we hope that we are included in the guide. So that's something that, you know, we work very hard at maintaining and being as consistent as we possibly can.
Yeah, such an awesome story. And I can't imagine the anxiety of finding out at 7 a.m. and having to wait till 9 a.m. to make that phone call.
Unreal.
Yes.
Like absolutely unreal. And you know what I'm going to say, don't you? It was the longest 2 hours of our lives. It was, yeah, amazing.
Awesome. Our next question is definitely a little bit of a switch, but it's a really good question. I want to make sure it gets asked. So it's coming from Warrington and Vale Royal College. And they have asked, with so much focus on the news, social media and government on environmental impact and sustainability, what changes have you and your restaurant made or are making towards a more sustainable future?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, and it's something now that in our group, as in the Ainsworth collection, like is at the forefront of everything we do. And you know, it's small steps as well, because, you know, like for starters, all of our buildings were once like homes. Number 6, where I'm sat now, was once somebody's home. You know, it's an 18th century Georgian townhouse. So we're not surrounded by land, and, you know, in terms of kind of getting to the point of like, you know, composting and all of those. But the immediate steps that we can make, and the big one is like minimizing the food waste to absolute minimal, and then anything that literally cannot be used, like once bones have been completely used for stocks, that they're then not going into like what we call general waste, which then goes to landfill. They're then going to food waste. Then all of the obvious things, which we obviously produce a lot of, and that is making sure that we minimize our plastic usage. And then anything that we can't minimize, or there's not a solution yet, and that still has to be plastic, is then recycled. Paper, card, bottles, like all of our glass. So that's our like huge one that we do. We have, and that we've been doing when we opened Padstow Townhouse. One of the things, Padstow Townhouse is like about a 5-minute walk from Padstow. It's in Padstow town, but it's in the old part of Padstow. So we had a fully electric car from the moment we opened Townhouse in 2015, because we'll chauffeur people around the town. And you can imagine as well, like that was quite ahead of its time in 2015, and like, yeah, something you'd see, like started to see quite regularly in London, but certainly not something you'd see in Padstow. And in the summertime, when Padstow's heaving, and like the team were trying to get through the town with a fully silent car, was pretty tricky. But yeah, we are constantly evolving and looking at everything we do, and that also starts as well with a lot of things like you know, our producers, our suppliers, how we're working with them. But yeah, great question, and something that is absolutely top of our agenda now, like on a daily basis, of how can we be better, it being more sustainable. And that also doesn't just go to commodity and products, that goes to the people in our team. How can we make a better sustainable environment for them? So you've got to add that into the equation as well, and that is like making sure that we're giving them the best quality life we can, making sure we're paying them the best we can. All of those things are included in that sustainability program.
It's really great to hear, I think, because the more the younger generations are kind of going to get out there and they're going to become the consumer, that's a huge focus for them. So it's great to hear that businesses are changing now, and kind of what you're thinking of how to develop this.
Yeah.
As we try and save the planet, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have time just for a couple more questions. Fastly approaching the end of the session, which is so sad. So our next question then is going to be, again, it's come in today anonymously, and it's, how important was having a mentor to your success?
Completely and utterly like pivotal into like where we've got today. And if I could say to anyone, like, if you can find someone that you can trust and you can really like learn from, and know that like it's an amazing thing to kind of try and find somebody to help you. And that comes in all different mannerisms. It might be someone that's a friend who's, you know, quite successful in business and you really trust their opinion, like, and call them, talk to them, like bounce ideas off of people. I've just always had this thing of like, stay teachable, constantly learn, constantly listen, surround yourself with the best possible people. And I'm a big believer in, you know, surround yourself with people that are better than you. And that doesn't mean I'm not saying that in a way of like, well, that's, you're saying someone's better than you. I'm not saying it in that way. I'm saying it in a way of people that have had like lots of experience and can share those experiences, you know, for you. And, you know, like, I've had amazing mentors in my life. You know, the first ever mentor, you know, my mum and dad. You know, my dad was like incredible in sort of how he kind of like, you know, sort of started me on my way. And then the chefs I work for, they've all played a huge part. But, you know, in particular, like Gordon, you know, was an amazing influence and mentor to me when I worked for him. And now, you know, like, you know, someone said to me the other day, you know, it's amazing, you know, to sort of, you know, if anyone saw, you know, the show I've just done recently with him, you know, like Next Level Chef and, you know, stuff like that. Like that, there's a good lesson in there as well. Is like never sort of like never burn bridges, never sort of like, you know, keep all the hard work you've done, just because you might be going on to something new and starting a new chapter in your life, you know, like end things properly, end things well. And, you know, because you never know like what it can lead to later on. And I didn't see Gordon for 15 years. Like, we didn't have no contact whatsoever. And then all of a sudden your paths cross again. And now, you know, he's someone that is amazing to talk to and bounce ideas off and talk to, you know, about business and all of those things. But, you know, two very, very special people in my life, a man called Derek Mapp and his wife, Karen Mapp, have been unbelievable for me. And, you know, Derek is kind of like sort of twice my age, but is now like the chairman of the Ainsworth collection. But the things that I've learned and the sort of the errors, the mistakes I've made, and just having somebody there to kind of guide me or nurture me or kind of help me, because you have to remember, like anyone, you want to be a chef. And what you don't realize is that when you want to be a chef, if you want to sort of have a restaurant or have your own business, you can't just be a chef in the kitchen cooking. You have to understand how to make the whole thing work. And that's been the biggest thing from Derek, is one, how to make a business work, but also one, how to make a business work with people and make sure that they are at the absolute forefront of everything you do. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't got the right people, good people, there is no business. And the only way that you have good people and amazing people within what you do is by treating them like family. And that's something that he's taught me. And, you know, that's not something that necessarily comes hand in hand when you just go straight into kitchen after kitchen after kitchen.
Yeah, definitely. I love that kind of, and also how you started with your parents being your first mentor. I guess they are, but we don't really consider them a mentor. So I like that that's where you started.
Absolutely, they are, and I know now firsthand just how difficult it is. And I've got, you know, my daughter; she's 7 years old, and you just realise that, like, you, like, as parents, like, it's such a responsibility because, you know, like, from the moment they're born, it's just like they are utterly reliant on you, and, you know, from a care, from a welfare, from a everything aspect, but also as well, you are like a mentor to them. You're trying to guide them and help them start their journey.
So we have time just for one last question before we move on to final thoughts and end the session. So we've had several questions come in from Gio, but we're only going to have time to ask one of them. And they have said, one of their students has asked, you know, our students only see the glamorous side of becoming a top chef. What skills and attributes do students need to try and become a top chef? And what is the best type of work experience they can apply for, other than a large food chain?
Yeah. So first of all, it goes back to what we spoke about earlier. Like, it really is as simple as this, and don't overcomplicate it. If you want to become a top chef, if you want to become the top of anything in any walk of life as a professional career person, it comes through commitment, it comes through dedication, and it comes through just a resilience and just knowing that it is going to be hard, it is going to be tough, and it is okay to have bad days, rubbish weeks, rubbish months, whatever it can. But as long as you just keep going, and as long as you never ever give up, and then that leads on to, but that only also works. It has to be a blend of you as a person having that mindset, having that mentality, but also making sure that if you're going to have that focus and that mindset, that you're working in the best possible environment in any sector, in any form of job, career, whether you're going to go on to be an amazing CEO, whether you're going to go on to be a top chef, have your own restaurant, group executive chef of a hotel, an amazing restaurant director, maitre d', whatever it is in life, top sports person. You just need to make sure that you're also in an environment where it goes back to what I've just told you about mentoring, that you're surrounded by people that want the best for you, that aren't putting you down, that aren't kind of like sort of, you know, making themselves look better by putting you down. Because if you feel that's happening, you're in the wrong place. Okay, you need to kind of make sure that you're in the right place, and don't be afraid to kind of move on. But also do your research. If it is a kitchen you're going into, go and make a short list of kitchens, restaurants, whether it's front of house, back of house, and then from there, go and do what's called a stage, and that's just basically going and spending a couple of days, a few days, and then if you can say, do you know what, I can really see myself there. That's where I felt comfortable. You've done your research, and then, yeah, commit, don't give up, and absolutely go for it.
I think that was an awesome question to end today's session on. A really nice thing to kind of round things out. So thank you for Joe for asking that question. Before we end, do you have any final thoughts or feelings that you'd like to leave our young people with today?
Yeah, I would, and I hope this helps you all. And I want you to know it's coming from a place that I also suffer with, but I can also remember a life without it, and it's simply, social media is a wonderful thing, and it has a lot of positives, and it can be really, really useful in many, many ways. But also as well, it can be harming. It can be a bit dangerous in that it can make us all feel that we are not good enough, and we are looking at other people's lives, and we start to compare. And sometimes if you can just kind of have a break from it, if you can just shut out the noise a little bit, I feel it can really help you focus on what it is you're doing right now and commit to that, rather than being distracted by it and then thinking, oh, okay, you know, well, I've seen that and they're doing this or they're doing that. And then it makes you a bit indecisive. And the only way for me truly to to get to the top of whatever you want to do, it goes back to the question we just ended on. You have to have the commitment, the discipline, the drive, the resilience inside. But also, if you're then in a really, really good place, don't just be there for a few months, a year. Like, do some proper time and really like take everything from that place that you're working at, rather than sort of being distracted by the noise that can be social media, that can then make us, just myself included, feel like, oh, I should be doing that. Oh, why are we not there? Why have we not got to that point? And that's where it can be a bit damaging. So just like, social media is just a very small thing. Like, it's not the be all and end all. Just focus on you, and just sometimes look up and what's going on around you, and don't let it distract your commitment or your focus to what you're doing right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul. It's been
Pleasure.
great having you on.
Thank you for having me.
We've had so many great questions in. It's been a really awesome broadcast. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlie. Thanks for having me. And thanks for everyone who watched.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Unfortunately,
Thank you.
that's all we have time for.